Hey, it's Daryl, checking in now from Nashville. Let me get back here. And wanted to connect and let you guys know what I'm up to in the next few weeks and actually the next month or two. And to give you some information, I'm getting a lot of questions about what the difference is between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. And we're pretty, we're pretty connected to what we think we know or we've grown up with. We've grown up with Western knowing our sun sign and identifying with that, and a lot of time and effort has gone into it. And even you see it in social media, you see it everywhere where people are really either identified or disidentified, or there's a favorite sign or not so favorite sign. And what is the difference? There are many differences, but I'll start with a couple high level ones just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what it's about. Both Western and Vedic astrology have the same houses and signs, right? But how they're measured and where they are in the sky and the history behind them is quite different. For instance, Vedic astrology is a very, very old practice. About 5,000 years ago, there were ancient rishis and priests that were looking at the skies and came up with these ancient texts. And 5,000 years ago is a very long time. Because if you think about it, you go back to when we started using a calendar. So this was, I want to say the Babylonians, it was 500, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. About 500 BC. And that's when we started using calendars, and the way that they based the calendar was not on the sidereal zodiac, which is measuring the constellations to the planet, the constellations, but was actually measuring the ecliptic. And the ecliptic is where the Earth goes around the sun. So it's this parallel measurement. Make it very simple. The measurements are wrong and the degrees are off. So in the calendar, they decided, the Gregorian calendar, this calendar we're using now, 500 years BC, not 5,000 years ago, is based on seasons. So every spring, what happens is we restart. We put the sun in Aries at 0 degrees, whether it's really there or not. So if you were to actually track it, measuring yourself for, 4 or 5 years, you'll see that there's a difference. And it wouldn't really make that big of a difference overall, like most people wouldn't really know. But what happens is over time, that placement has gone so far that it would take you into another sign. So say you were Aries 200 years ago. Now you're probably a Gemini, because every 72 years, that would take that a half inch into another sign. So that's a couple of things. Another is the sun sign. Oh my gosh, we are so identified with our sun being in the same sign for an entire month. I'm Virgo in Western, and I can understand, I can relate to some of the things, and I like orderliness, and I'm kind of earthy. I love nature. I'm not ever critical, never. But I kind of didn't really super always resonate, even though that was what I was given as my sign. And then when I found out my true sign in Vedic astrology, I'm also a Virgo. But having gone in and learned a little bit more about my sun's placement, about my moon, the ascendant, and all the other planets and how they're linked, and kicking off my karmas, I understood it a lot more. And I don't feel like the typical Virgo, but that's because I have a lot of planets in the 12th house, which creates a lot of confusion. And my kids would tell you I could confuse a lot of people. So that's one thing. Western measures your sign based on your sun sign, which everybody in the month of September mostly are Virgo. In Eastern or Vedic astrology, what happens is every 2 hours across the horizon comes a new constellation, and that is what pins you. And that is what your ascendant is. But then you take the measurements from that, and then you can calculate the rest of the birth chart, which then gives, this is so cool, this is what I love about Vedic astrology, is that then you can make predictions based on the timings, and they're very specific to you. Really truly, your sign, your chart is like a thumbprint or a fingerprint to you. Nobody else has the same exact chart because it uses coordinates. It's very specifically measuring in the sky. and the effects and the impact and imprints that we receive from these from the signs, from the planets, how they do together, really inform us in our spiritual evolution. You know, you may know several people that have the same birthday as you. I know a couple of people. We are so different. And I always kind of thought, how does that even work? So I made the jump. I made the leap. I started learning more. I really love it. I like to be able to share with others where their blind spots might be, because Vedic astrology also talks about that and shows us. And it's predictive. I mentioned that. There's this cycle called this Vimshottari Dasha cycles. And based on the moment you're born, it kind of kicks off this timeline for you and indicates where things go or don't go, or how they do, depending on the planet, depending on the dignity. There's so many factors. But the difference is that Western doesn't do that. There's no ancient texts. There are no Vedas. There are no 5,000 year ago rishis talking about the skies and how this all works. So for me, I'm kind of a believer, obviously, and I love this. And I see time and again where it's really working. So I'm telling you about this because I think it would help you or anybody who can learn a little bit more about themselves, or in the times now where we're some people I know are homeschooling their children and everyone's got a different personality and what's going on. And not that you don't know your people, but being able to shine a light on their strengths, or, understand why there's a certain receptivity or pushback on certain things. It shows up in the chart. I mean, all this stuff is in the chart. And if you don't believe me, you can check. I mean, I can show you. I'm going to be teaching a 5-week, 5-module class coming up at the end of December, first week in actually January 6th. The sign up will end in December. And what that's going to be about is the sun, the moon, and your ascendant in Vedic astrology. So your birth time is required to understand your chart and your location as best you can. This puts you on the map for the ascendant. And why does that matter? Well, when you know what time you're born and you calculate your ascendant, everything else is mapped around that. And what about the sun? Well, yes, we identify with the sun. That's why, the sun in that particular sign you might have already identified with. As a Virgo, I kind of did, but not all the way. That's because it's myself, my true self, my soul, my connection, my identity. And there's more about that, and where it is in the chart has another factor, gives more information on where you are. Like, are you super bold? Are you not so bold? Do you have self-confidence issues? Are you too pushy? It depends on where it's placed in your chart, because it was in transit. It's not necessarily going to be in the placement that it was for your Western sign. And just to understand that a little bit more, and why and where and how that works with that ascendant. Then the moon. I love the moon. It's also my Atmakarka, which is the planet with the most strength. So the moon is our receptivity and our feelings nature. And it's really meant for us to be sensitized to the area that it rules and the area that it's transiting. And in this 5-week class, I'm going to be talking about the sun, the moon, and the ascendant in great detail. And then after that, we'll go through and we'll talk about each ascendant sign and the sun and the moon, where they're placed, how they do, and how it impacts you, whether it's in good dignity or not so great dignity. We're going to talk about the spiritual evolution, the procession of how we're developing with those planets. So if you have any questions or you're at all interested, I would love to have you. I'll put out the flyer soon. You can contact me and let me know that you're interested. I think I'm going to offer 2 scholarships, because I know a lot of students out there can't really afford. It's going to be a very inexpensive fee, and the rates will go up later next year. I'm doing this one-time deal so that I can record this and share this for other classes I'm doing. So any questions, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you don't know your ascendant, your Vedic astrology ascendant, let me know your birth stuff. I can get you a chart and I can show you. Or you can get a reading if you have any confusion or misunderstanding about where you are in life and you need a little clarity. I'm here for that too. So thanks so much. Best to you.